I've spoken so highly of this particular lodge to so many brother Masons up in the Las Vegas and Henderson area over the years. From the first day I walked in the door here as a visitor, Dennis, believe it or not, Dennis of all people made me feel welcome. He's making up for that now, but he was one of the first people to greet me and truly made me feel welcome in this lodge. And I see a lot of friendly and familiar faces from when I was in the lodge here. Of course, Hardy, Stan, Ken, Gil, and good old Jack, Dennis, yes. The two, Jack was the one who sponsored me into this lodge, and Stan was the second signer on my petition. So if any of you are dissatisfied with my presentation, I am not responsible for my actions. As we're videotaping this, Scotty, if you're watching this, miss you, wish you were here, and wish you a speedy recovery on your nose job. Let's get going. Before I get into the presentation is going to be on symbolism alone. Things. This is what the presentation is going to be on tonight. And the presentation is going to cover all of the symbols involved in this particular painting. But I wanted to introduce something to you if you're not to this lodge, if it's not familiar with it. Back in 1877, the government of Egypt donated an obelisk to the United States. And it was eventually erected in Central Park in New York. It got the title of Cleopatra's Needle. And the interesting thing about this obelisk that was donated was that when it came to the United States, probably for security reasons, the government decided to open up the base of the pyramid to see if anything was in it. And when they opened up the base of the pyramid, what they found was a trowel, they found a plum, they found a rough stone, and they found a polished stone, a rough ashlar and a polished ashlar. And you might say, okay, big deal. But yeah, it is a big deal. Because this obelisk came from Alexandria, where it was erected in 22 BC. But prior to that, that obelisk was moved from Heliopolis, Egypt, where it was erected 1600 BC. So we're seeing the symbolism of Freemasonry, of modern speculative Freemasonry, was not born in 1717. These are symbols that go back into the deepest parts of antiquity. And I bring that up for two reasons. It's very interesting. And Egypt is going to be an integral part of the presentation tonight. Anyone who's interested in seeing a presentation on Cleopatra's Needle, Springfield Lodge of Virginia put a 40-minute video together, which is incredible. And it has vintage photos of them, how they had to put the obelisk into the ship, of course the ship transported the obelisk to New York Harbor, and then how they had to move the obelisk from the harbor into Central Park. They moved this obelisk through New York City back in the late 1880s at 90 feet a day. That's how big and cumbersome it was. Now imagine trying to move anything to New York City at 90 feet a day today. It would never happen. So if you're interested, there is a video. It's an awesome video. The photos alone are worth the price of admission. With that said, let's get...
Joe, is that on YouTube?
Yeah. Just, I guess if you Google Cleopatra's Needle, Springfield Masonic Lodge, Virginia, you should be able to pick it up. Let's talk a little bit about symbols. Symbols are mankind's way of attempting to depict abstract concepts and divine mysteries by way of drawings, artwork, statues, patterns, and designs. Symbols are used to bring the abstract, what we know but can't conceive, into a visual picture so we can relate this picture to that abstract concept. We can see a symbol, but we can't see an abstract concept. But once we see a symbol, we don't forget it. How about no more ghosts, from Ghostbusters, or stop signs? When you see them once, you'll never forget them. And again, how do we portray such abstract concepts as rulership? The picture I just handed out to you, every lodge has a symbol of this nature in the northeast corner. Now there are small, slight variations on the symbol, but effectively every painting is the same. Small variations. And this picture is from Daylight Lodge 44, where I was raised in 1997. And the first time I saw it in Lodge, which of course was after I became an Entered Apprentice, first time I saw this painting, I said, wow, it just captivated my attention. I could not get my eyes off this every time I entered Lodge. The tremendous symbolism involved in this one painting is amazing. Whoever designed this painting was a master of symbolism. So let's get into it. The first thing we'll notice about this painting is that there's no landscape. There's no trees, there's no dirt, there's no mountains. There's nothing to even suggest that Earth is involved in this picture. And this is telling us that the symbolism in this picture is taking place in a higher place of consciousness, in a higher heavenly realm. This is not taking place on an earthly realm. This depicts higher consciousness ideas and ideals. And the first, we'll start at the bottom with the two slabs. The two slabs, well, let me back up a second. We talked about the Egyptian obelisk, but now we're going to talk about some deities in Egypt, and there's a reason for this. I asked, how do we portray things as rulership, motherhood, harmony? Well, the way the Egyptians did it is very simple. If that aspect of nature or aspect of divinity was masculine, it would be portrayed with a man's body. If it was a feminine aspect of nature or of divinity, it'd be portrayed with a woman's body. And what is the difference between masculine and feminine? Well, masculine is active, it's reason and logic, it's consciousness, and it's the seed. Feminine is passive, it's intuition, insight, imagination, it's subconscious, and it's the womb. So anything basically active, and consciousness is active, subconsciousness is passive, but anything active would be portrayed as masculine, anything feminine would be portrayed as feminine. So now we have a picture of a man with the head of a hawk, Horus, and that portrays rulership. Why? First of all, rulership is what? It's active. So it's portrayed with the masculine body. The hawk rules the heavens. It's one of the three birds that rule the heavens, the hawk, the falcon, and the eagle. In this country, we use the eagle. But they use the hawk over there. And just as the hawk rules the heaven, the Pharaoh is supposed to rule the earth. Now, here's the catchy thing about Pharaoh. When we hear stories about Pharaonic Egypt and the lessons reverting to the Pharaoh. Yes, the Pharaoh is in charge of his humongous realm, but we are pharaohs in charge of our realm, how we behave, how we interact. Every one of our actions is determined by who we are. We are the pharaoh of our own realm. So when we see a lesson pertaining to a pharaoh, we can direct that lesson directly to us, because we're supposed to behave in the same fashion if we're going to grow. So rulership was portrayed as masculine, with the head of a hawk, rulership of the heaven, and the Pharaoh rules the earth, as opposed to below. Then we have a woman with the head of a cow, Hathor. Well, Hathor portrays motherhood. Motherhood is feminine, isn't it? So motherhood is portrayed with a female body and the head of a cow. Why a cow? Where do we get the milk to nourish the newborn? What does a cow do? It's docile, it's nourishing, it's nurturing. Every aspect of motherhood is involved in a cow. So that's where we get, where they got, how they depicted these different aspects of nature, aspects of divinity, masculine and feminine, and then they chose an animal or an object that could symbolize that particular abstract concept. In ancient Egypt, there was only one god, and this one god was Amun. Amun in ancient Egypt was never portrayed because their feeling on Amun was, how do you portray the unknowable, that which is beyond conception? You can't. However, the deity, Amun, expresses itself in many different ways. And this is why it was portrayed with the different deities of ancient Egypt. Motherhood, rulership, harmony, teaching, education. Thoth was the master of wisdom. So all these different things are portrayed as aspects of divinity, not as divinity itself, but as an aspect of divinity. It is divinity. Just like the elbow is part of our body. We have a body, but the elbow is part of the body. Our fingers are part of our body. All these different aspects are part of divinity. And now we're going to talk about the slabs, the ashlars. In ancient Egypt, the aspect of harmony, which also portrays truth, justice, balance, order, was portrayed by a deity called Maat, M-A-A-T. Maat was a feminine. It was portrayed as feminine. Why? Because harmony, think of harmony. Harmony, balance, anything that's in balance is not active, it's passive. When you balance something, when something is perfectly balanced or perfectly horizontal, vertical, it's not active, it's passive. So harmony was expressed as a female deity with an ostrich feather sticking out of her headband. But before Maat was portrayed as a female deity with an ostrich feather sticking out of her headband, she was portrayed as a plinth or a platform. And this platform was what the other deities, these other aspects of nature stood on, so they wouldn't wobble or waver in the function of their duties. Motherhood cannot be rulership. Motherhood is motherhood. Probably give a better example in modern day, gravity. Gravity doesn't care if it's a rock falling off a cliff or a baby falling off a cliff. Gravity is gravity. It's going to pull that, whatever's going falling off the cliff down. It doesn't waver in the performance of its duty. So all these different aspects of divinity were required not to waver in the performance of their duty, not to wobble or waver in the performance of their duty. And the flat platform was a way to give them balance so they're not standing on sand, falling all over the place. So they had a solid, level place to stand and do their functions. And here we see that plinth portrayed as two ashlars. So these two ashlars are portraying harmony. And another way this can be portrayed, and anyone who's done reading in ancient religions has probably seen a deity or two standing on a holy book. Same thing, whether it's a platform, a holy book, or an ashlar, the symbolism represents the same thing, harmony. And harmony is what is supporting the two Saints John in this particular picture. Now, what is it we hear the worshipful master say at the beginning of every meeting? I forbid any unmasonic action that may disturb the harmony of the group. Now, I'm not a ritualist, so maybe I got some of the words wrong, but he opens the meeting by saying he forbids any unmasonic conduct which may disturb the harmony of the group. So here we have harmony. Harmony here is supporting the two Saints John. And at the end of the meeting, what does the senior warden say at the closing of our meetings? Harmony being the support of all institutions, especially this of ours. So, these slabs, these flat slabs upon which the two Saints John are standing, represents harmony, which is the most ancient concept, and it is being portrayed in this picture in the most ancient of ways. So again, we're seeing, just like the obelisk was brought here from ancient Egypt, with the lessons involved in the base, we're seeing harmony being portrayed as a support of the two Saints John. Now we'll go to the dot within the circle. And it's interesting that the dot within the circle is a pretty darn universal symbol. It is not only portrayed in our picture here, but in astronomy and astrology, the dot within the circle is used to portray the sun. In alchemy, it is used to represent gold, and gold we're going to talk about a little bit later on in its symbolism. So the dot within the circle represents a heck of a lot of things, but as we're seeing, as we will see, they represent something eternal and solid and enlightening. Gold, sun, light, enlightenment, illumination, and gold, which we will see represents the eternal. But to get a better grasp on this dot within the circle, let's picture it in a different way, in a different angle. Everybody knows what a fountain is, but what is a fountain basically? It's a pipe sticking out of the ground that shoots out water. Now let's hover over the pipe to where we're looking directly down at the pipe to where it's shooting out the water. The water comes out of the pipe, shoots out in the circle, and that's creation. This is symbolism now. This is symbolism and metaphor that is portrayed into real life and real spiritual concepts. Water comes out, sprouts out, and creates a circle around it, which is its creation. In the highest realm, the dot represents divinity and its eternal act of creation, sprouting out the eternal act of creation forever and ever. That's on the highest level. On the most mundane level, down here, the dot represents each one of us. And the circle symbolizes the world which we are continually spewing forth and creating for ourselves by way of our thoughts and actions. Everything we do, everything we say, creates our world. So when we read in text that we create our world, we really do. And we'll look at an example. Well, first of all, who of you would be here if you weren't sprouting out the essences and the lessons and the feelings and thoughts of Masonry? You'd be someplace else. You wouldn't be here. But let's take a closer look at this dot within the circle. We are the dot, no matter where we go. We might be the immovable dot, but our immovable dot moves. The immovable portion of us is what we create, creation from within. Let's say that it's Christmas time and you have a ticket to see the Nutcracker at the Everhigh College. You've been wanting to see the Nutcracker for a long time. Finally, this year you said, I'm going to buy the ticket, I'm going to go see it. You get dressed up in your finery and you drive it down the street going to the Everhigh College to see the Nutcracker. And you get stopped for a red light. And 30 feet away, and this is probably something everybody in this room experienced, 30 feet away, you have some guy handcuffed with his knees up to a squad car, and they're waiting to take him away. Same planet, same city, same street, two different worlds. And the only difference between that, between us and that person is what we spew forth with our thoughts and our actions and our words. The two parallel vertical lines. In symbolism, whenever the number 2 appears, it always always, always represents duality. Always. And it could be presented in very catchy different ways to where it just flies right by us. For example, in the story of the Garden of Eden, regarding the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, the words good and evil are a cover-up for what it truly is, the tree of duality. The tree of extremes of duality. And when Adam and Eve ate the fruit, what happened? They went from the world of unity to the world of duality. So duality, whenever we see two expressed in any fashion, it will always represent duality. You know, we live in a realm of duality, hot and cold, front and back, top and bottom, this event or that event, this choice or that choice. Duality goes on and on in this realm. You can't be in this realm and not experience duality. You can't have a one-sided coin. You can't have a one-sided fence. Everything is dual. Everything is dual in nature, and the only difference between one thing and another is the extreme of duality that it expresses, but everything is dual. Now, what's the difference between hot and cold? How does hot and cold get together? Well, instead of being cold, you might have cool, less cool, until you finally get into the middle, you know, until you get a temperate temperature. Hot, warm, moderate, but in the middle, it's neither hot nor cold. This is an important concept. Notice that the dot, which represents ourselves in the circle, is directly in the midpoint of the two vertical lines. What this picture is showing that the dot represents us in two different aspects. One, as the dot within the circle spewing forth our creation, and the dot between the two parallel lines fighting against the pull of duality, the extremes of duality on either side. Being forced to choose one political party or candidate over another and getting caught up in the issues and events of self-serving factions is one good example of how we relinquish harmony and invite discord into our lives. When we associate ourselves with any outside issue or faction, our dot is no longer in the center of our two parallel lines. It's no longer in the center of duality. We're at someplace near, we're off center, we're maybe at an extreme, fanatics are at an extreme. But when we allow the different factions of society to push us around or con us or trick us in any way, we're being moved from the center, from where we should be to see both sides of an issue clearly, and now we become clouded in our thinking. And as you are well aware, people and factions are continually pulling on us and imposing themselves on us, demanding our obedience and conversion. Remember that the original video game they put out called Pong? And it had a paddle here and a paddle there, and it had a little dot, a little ball in the middle, and it would bounce the ball back and forth, and all of a sudden it would go faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. Well, that's what we're like when we allow outside influences to take control of the governing of our sovereignty, of our personal lives. Give you an example. Many people watch the evening news, and I'm not going to ask for a raise of hands who watch the evening news or not. But for those of you who watch the evening news, how many of you are happy and peaceful after watching it? Oh, I didn't even have to get to the next sentence here. How many of you can go directly to bed and say, wow, that was wonderful. I have never felt so at peace. Now I can get myself a good night's sleep and wake up well refreshed. These aspects of society are continually attacking us, trying to knock us off center, preventing us from being an unattached observer to what's going on around us and making real sane decisions that are best for us physically, mentally, and spiritually. For our dot to remain in the center of the two parallel lines of duality, we must be the unattached observer who observes the folly of the masses but refuses to partake in the folly. And again, it is interesting to note that the dot in this painting is used both to represent the midpoint of the circle and the midpoint of the two parallel lines. Now we'll get to the two Saints John. Again, we're looking at duality here. And first question that's going to come up from somebody is, well, if this is duality, why do we have two masculine figures here? Which is a very good question. Duality is expressed in two ways. On the mundane level, it's expressed in the concepts of masculine and feminine. But as we get into the higher levels of consciousness, it's expressed as spiritual and material. We are by creation a spiritual essence trapped in a material body for a specific amount of time. So we are experiencing physical and spiritual duality all at the same time. It's interesting, I guess it's interesting, but in ancient teachings, the mind was always associated with the body. Because the mind basically controls what the body does. The spirit is a separate essence which is incorporated in the body. But the body and the mind are always considered the same essence, whatever they decided to call themselves in that particular part of the world. They were teachers who were responsible for seeing to the people's needs. One priest king saw to the people's physical material guidance. The other priest king saw to the people's spiritual guidance. And this is what the two Saints John are symbolizing here. And as teaching and guidance is an active or masculine aspect of nature and divinity, these teaching aspects are symbolized as two masculine figures. The Saint John on the left is dressed in a brown, earthly color, an animal garment. So he represents the teacher of the earthly, physical, and material guidance. The Saint John on the right is dressed in a blue, a heavenly colored garment. So he represents the teacher who caters to the people's spiritual needs. So the people in these ancient spiritual sects, I guess you would call them, we're taught how to handle life on a physical basis and on a spiritual basis to keep well balanced. Also notice that the Saint John on the right, who's dressed in blue and represents the heavenly or spiritual teacher, is writing with a quill, a feathered pen. Feathers, wings, and birds are all symbols of spirit. They could be used interchangeably. Either spirit or the spiritual. This is a further reinforcement that this Saint John has to do with the spiritual. Note that both the Saint Johns are standing on the stone slab, the perfect ashlar of harmony, balance, and mott. This depicts to us that the two Saints John cannot and will not wobble or waver in the conducting of their lessons. Their lessons are true, balanced, and harmonious. And these two Saints John remind us that we, as Masons, should adhere to and practice those higher qualities and virtues which guide both our physical and spiritual behavior. Now we come to the volume of sacred law, and I think this is where it's going to get very exciting. Above all is the volume of sacred law, the unwritten spiritual laws which govern not only mankind, but also the entire universe. In many religious paintings, the volume of sacred law is replaced by a crown. And I'm sure a number of people here have seen paintings of a crown hovering over earthly features. Same concept. It's the heavenly governing material. And now I'm going to get into a little article I wrote here, because for me to express the volume of sacred law, we have to look at sacred law versus man-made law, divine law versus man-made law. And it was a neat quote I ran across years ago by George Bernard Shaw. It says, Forgive him, for he believes that the customs of his tribe are the laws of the universe. Now, think about this. Think about all the prejudices and false teachings we acquired as children, which were pushed into us unknowingly. We were taught a lot of things, a lot of behaviors which do not conform with spiritual laws. Well, people who live on that side of the street, they're troublemakers. We're the good guys on this side. Or they eat their potatoes with the skin on. We don't eat the potatoes with the skin on. Little, almost incidental things like this affect us throughout life, and it takes us a lot of time to unwind from these kind of prejudices that have been pushed into us from birth. Now, did our parents mean evil to us when they taught us these things? No. But that's what they were taught by their parents, who were taught by their parents, who were taught by their parents. We spend a lot of time of our lives dealing with man-made laws. So much time that many of us has probably forgotten that there are laws which are far superior to man-made laws. These superior laws are the divine laws which govern not only our personal lives, but also the conscious universe, along with all that exists within it as well. And as each of us is primarily concerned with our personal lives, let's look at the difference between man-made laws versus divine laws and evaluate how these two different sets of principles affect our current incarnation. In addition, man-made laws are not limited to statutory laws, but they also include the rules, regulations, bylaws, policies, and procedures of every organization and faction on our planet. You go for a job interview, and they say, well, we want somebody who thinks out of the box. And then you sign a policy and procedure manual that tells you if you think outside the box, you're going to be fired. Man-made laws, right? Stand smiling over there. Smoke signals. Although society requires a basic structure in order for it to function freely, safely, and properly, an overabundance of man-made laws often leads to chaos and loss of respect simply because of these laws over time. And these laws become not only contradictory to each other, but their design is very often inconsistent and disharmonious with divine laws which govern all of creation. Man-made laws, by their very nature, tend to be fickle, fleeting, changeable, prejudicial, and inconsistent. Furthermore, what did I hear there? Furthermore. Jack, where?
No, I don't know.
Anybody know? Furthermore. Dennis, help me out. Furthermore, man-made laws may either be enforced, randomly enforced, or disregarded on the whims of whatever political faction is currently in a position of authority. Also, man-made laws quite often bestow special privileges upon individuals belonging to a certain class, or social status, or income status. And finally, as most of us have experienced, man-made laws often differ radically from time to time and from place to place. What is considered to be legal or illegal in one period of time may be looked upon quite differently in another period of time. The same holds true for cultures, states, nations, and races. What is deemed to be either legal, illegal, or unimportant in one segment of society may be looked upon entirely different in another segment of society. Here, a man can have one wife. Here, a man can have 20 wives. Same Earth, same planet, same group of humanoids, but here a man can have one wife, here a man can have 20 wives, right? This guy's on one blood pressure medication, this guy's on 20 blood pressure medications. But this is the way it is. Man-made laws are based upon theory, compromise, and current political and social whims. Man-made laws are governance by force and guilt. And this is why societies, nations, and civilizations often meet bitter ends. For they force upon people rules, laws, restrictions, and constrictions which are not only inconsistent, but often at odds with divine laws. Divine laws, on the other hand, are exact, and opposite of man-made laws. Divine laws are constant, unwavering, and eternal. Divine laws are the same for every person, place, and time without prejudice. Divine laws are divine principles. They are the basic truths which govern the cosmos. These laws have been passed down to us from the very beginning of time. We find these divine laws depicted in the symbolism contained within the ancient Egyptian deities. Divine laws, if adhered to, allow for the free and balanced flow of energy within a race, a nation, a society, and a person. If not adhered to, those who disregard these laws will suffer the consequences of their actions. Divine laws allow for self-governance. We can either choose to obey these laws or to disregard them. Divine laws are simple, basic, and eternal. And it is perhaps because of their simplicity that these laws are so often ignored. And let's look at some of these divine laws. The law of truth. What is. Truth is not found in the hopes and wishes and opinions of either ourselves or others. What we think should be, or what we complain about what should be, is absolutely irrelevant. The only thing that matters if we're looking for truth is what is. You don't like this person, you don't like this candidate, you don't like this church, you don't like this religion. Big deal. If it's affecting your life, recognize it for what it is and adjust your behavior accordingly. If you're in a disharmonious area of life, recognize the truth of that area for what it is. Move someplace else which is more harmonious for who you are. But what is. There's no other option. Arguments, all kind of debates are centered upon hypotheses about what should be and what shouldn't be. Totally irrelevant. All that matters is what is. The law of ignorance. To be unaware of what is real and what is true does not release us from the consequences of ignorance. If we make a decision based on whatever information we're using, and it's wrong, that's because we were ignorant of something. And by removing ignorance from our life piece by piece, we become more aware of the way the world is functioning around us. The law of karma. Boy, this is powerful. The law of karma. Every action, whether by word or deed, has its consequence. It is up to know the consequences of our actions. This covers a lot of territory. Every action has a consequence. Darth Vader said, "Your actions define your destiny. Choose wisely." Now here's an example of a spiritual wisdom coming from the most hideous character in the Star Wars movies. But truth is the truth no matter where it comes from, whether it comes from your worst enemy or your best friend. On the other hand, if your best friend invites you over for coffee and accidentally slips you arsenic instead of sugar by mistake, you're gonna suffer that consequence, whether the intention was good or bad, whether this was your best friend or not your best friend. So truth needs to be sought everywhere, whether it's from our best friend, our worst enemy. But the benefits we have today, we have enormous volumes of books written by ancients, along with the commentary that's associated with them to teach us, to guide us on our way to better awareness and behavior. Karma. I don't know if this is an old movie, and I don't know how many people here have seen it. It's a black and white movie. God, it's probably made in the 40s. It's called The Painting of Dorian Gray. You've seen it? Okay, great. Now, Dorian Gray was a charismatic, evil person. Very charismatic, very evil. Living today, he'd probably be president. But very charismatic and evil. And he goes to to a painter. And he says to the painter, which happens to be the devil, he says, I want to remain eternally youthful, young, and charismatic. But I want you to paint my picture. And, well, I'm remaining eternally youthful, young, and charismatic. I want my picture to age. So the painter paints the picture, which Dorian Gray displays in his parlor. And Dorian Gray goes out there and starts doing his hideous deeds and taking advantage of women and stealing and murdering. And all of a sudden he comes back home one day and he sees a mark on the painting. And he thinks he might have banged it or someone bumped into it that caused the mark. Goes out the next day, commits more criminal activity. Another feature is disfigured. And this goes on day after day after day until the painting of Dorian Gray is so hideous, so grotesque that he shoves it away in a closet, never to open the closet again. This is a perfect example of karma. Every action we do, we are continually building our temple. This is our temple. Everything within is our temple. Every action we do, every word we utter, and every deed we perform, we're putting a block into our temple. A block here, a block there, continually building our temple. And these blocks determine the ultimate character the character we have become and the character which we will become. So, by being aware of our words and by being aware of our deeds, we could cautiously choose the correct block to put into our temple and build our temple that way. This is karma. Karma is what we do to ourselves, and the consequences we're going to suffer if we're using the wrong blocks. And the word wrong is an opinion, but if we're using damaging blocks to build our character, we're going to be the guy at the side of the curb with his knees up against a police car and handcuffed. Otherwise, we'll be in the Masonic Lodge. Two different extremes, right? Really extremes. The law of awareness, to observe and understand what is happening within us, around us, and throughout our world. Now, awareness is not being told what to be aware of. I remember hearing a newscast. I don't watch TV. I haven't watched TV in decades. But I remember hearing a newscast. All the news you need to know. Really. As they're bouncing, as we're being bounced around from side to side. Now, to be awareness covers a great deal. Awareness is not just being aware of our behavior, but being aware of our immediate vicinity. How is our neighborhood? Is it going downhill? Is it going uphill? What kind of people are coming into our neighborhood? What destiny do we foresee happening in our neighborhood, in our society, in our country? And to be really aware of these things takes an individual effort to evaluate, to observe and evaluate. And we have no control over what government forces will do, what church forces will do, what neighborhood forces will do, what community forces will do. But we have the ability to be aware of what's happening so we can react and protect ourselves accordingly to live as harmoniously as we possibly can. The law of free will. We have the freedom to choose our thoughts and actions. However, this freedom comes with responsibility and consequences. Can we do anything we want to do? Sure. Can you go out there and kill somebody? Yeah. Are you prepared to meet those consequences? So, what kind of consequences do you want to face and govern your actions accordingly? Where did I hear that before? The law of sovereignty. The supreme gift which is bestowed upon each one of us that grants us a dream. This is sovereignty. A dream of how we choose to experience our current incarnation. Now, we have our sovereignty. We can either keep it or relinquish it. Sovereignty can be relinquished. People who join other people's causes are relinquishing a portion of their sovereignty, if not all of it. If the cause is just and true and what is harmonious with you, I suggest go with it. If it's somebody else's cause, I suggest looking twice, 3 times, 4 times. The law of interconnectedness. All words and actions have effects, often in ways we are unable to conceive. One thing about an action that we perform, and I'm going to include words as actions. One thing about an action that we perform, we very rarely see the result of an action, our action. Think about the person that you cut off on the road. We don't see the result of what happened with that person. Does it inspire a road rage in that person or what? Or on the other hand, the person we let in line in front of us on the road. That person may just have been cut off 5 minutes ago and is fuming. You let that person in, you just diffuse the whole situation. We very rarely see the results of our actions. And it's something that I think about all the time before I perform an action. What is going to be the consequence, even years down the road, about this action? I'm going to share an experience I had when I was living here. And this experience had to do where I saw the result of my action. I had to stop at Walmart down the street here to pick up some incidental item under $1. I forget what the item was. And it was late at night, and I go through the checkout counter, and the old lady's behind the checkout counter. And she looks at my item and she says, "Is this all you came here for?" And I don't know where it came from. I said, "No, I came here simply to see you." And she dropped the item and she said, "That is the nicest thing I've heard in years." And I was just being a wise ass, Jack. Me. But that time I got to see the result of an action.
What came over you?
Dennis, it's called the Blessed Realm. You should visit us one day. The law of destiny. There are various kinds of destinies: personal, societal, and planetary. And this falls into the, we kind of touched upon this on awareness. Observe what's going on in society and make a valid, independent decision on, do you want to be part of the destiny of society? When they had the dot-com era, where people were buying stocks that they were going out of style, everybody got caught up in the fray. A lot of people said, "Oh man, I'm not touching that. This is going to come crashing down." And it did, didn't it?
Except for the people who buy Yahoo.
The law of alchemy. To make something or someone pure, all impurities must be first removed. And alchemy, for those of you who've read about it, is basically this. Again, yes, removing impurities. But it is distillation after distillation after distillation. You distill something, and then you distill it again, and distill it again, and distill it again, until it's ultimately pure. And this is how we work on ourselves. We may not be able to cure all of our faults at one time, but we can cure this fault, we can cure that fault. And we're continually distilling ourselves, purifying ourselves one step at a time. This is alchemy. The law of harmony. We are either in harmony, perfect balance with the laws of the universe, or we are not. There is no middle ground in these matters. This is, again, what the ancient Egyptians referred to as Mont, and what we are depicting in our picture here as the perfect ashlar, which is harmony, which is supporting the two Saints John, the harmony which is supporting this institution of ours. And with that, I close my presentation. If there's any questions or constructive comments, I'd like to hear them. Otherwise, I'm going to sit down next to Dennis.
So which one would you look at?
Is it a typo?
Say John is holding his hand erect. Look carefully at his finger.
Yeah.
What is that?
As
What's the symbol of
above,
that?
yeah, as above, so below. As above, so below.
Oh,
Yeah, as above, so below. Matter of fact, you'll see that same hand gesture for anyone who works with the tarot. The magician and the tarot will hold his hands in the same way. As above, so below.
Did you ever see the pictures over here?
No.
Yeah, you'll have to get it, it's pretty.
So we're not gonna let him off this easy, are we?
no.
So close.
Okay, Joe.
No?
Give it, oh, yeah. I was very touched with the fact that you looked at the lady and said, no, I'm here to see you, to be with you, to have your presence, and to be there. A lot of people in what I do, people look at me as I'm leaving, they say, have a great day. Well, what does that mean, have a great day? What, would you please look me in the eye, and if you're gonna shake my hand, or you're a man, shake my hand and look at me and say, you make it a great day, with a smile and a glint in your eye. And it's amazing when you do that to some people that have never experienced it, what happens. And you get to see it. It's fun. And I like your story. I just love what you said.
I don't know who had had a better impact on her or me, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
Jack.
About laws. When I first became a Mason, and in the very first degree, we have actually the secret of Masonry explained to us, but most of us are so tired by that time, going through the entire degree, we're half asleep. You remember doing that? But the one constant law that flows through every religion is do unto others as you would have them do unto you in a similar circumstance. I used not to be a very good person, I admit it. Before I came into Masonry, I was just out for everything. And when I learned this law, it changed my attitude, the way I act, the way I think. And so today, give you quite a quick little example. One of my employees made a mistake that cost me $10,000. Back in the day, that would have been his last day of work for me, trust me. But he admitted his mistake and he says, I want to pay you for it. I said, no, I don't want your money. Just think of how you can do it better. About 5 minutes before he came in, I got a phone call, same guy. And he's telling me how he had solved all these different problems to make me a lot more money and to make the flow of work.
We need to strive to.
It's a battle.
Yeah.
It's a battle. But thank you all for your kind attention.
Excellent.
And for being here tonight, and of course for allowing me to come back and make my presentation to this lodge, which I have such great respect for.
Thank you.